Can Spain heal its political divide? Acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says he has a solution, offering an amnesty to Catalan separatists. Tens of thousands of protesters, supported by conservative parties, disagree. Is Sanchez really looking to unify the country or simply protecting his political status? I'm Marielle Saret, and today's newsmaker is Spain. For the first time in Spanish history, it looks like a candidate who technically lost the election will become prime minister. But judging from the streets, much of the public isn't too happy about it. Socialist acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has struggled to form a coalition, but a controversial offer to grant amnesty to Catalan separatists might just clinch a deal to form a working minority government. And that has angered tens of thousands of Spaniards. Backed by conservative parties, they've taken to the streets for over a week now in protest. Here's a look.
Acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has been the target of protests in Spain over a controversial law he's eager to pass. The proposed bill seeks amnesty for Catalan separatist activists and politicians. It's been filed this Monday, and even though it could take months for it to be approved, Sanchez insists it will benefit the country.
Catalonia
is ready for the full reunification. More than 80% of Catalans support this measure. And for those very reasons, in the interest of Spain, in defense of coexistence among Spaniards, I defend today the amnesty in Catalonia for the events of the past decade.
The move is also one of political strategy. Sanchez is trying to form a government, but he can't do it without the support of Catalan separatists in parliament. It has not gone down well with the Spanish right. The People's Party top brass say they will be challenging the proposed law in court.
It's not an amnesty that seeks reconciliation. What it exclusively seeks is the government's presidency. It's not an amnesty that seeks coexistence.
On Sunday, tens of thousands of protesters showed up in Barcelona and other cities, demanding Sanchez be put behind bars. Far-right political figures agree with them, arguing that the acting prime minister is out to suppress government institutions. So far, 29 police officers and 10 protesters have been injured in the protests. Public unrest has been increasing daily, with some protesters using Nazi chants and testing police barricades, only to be met with rubber bullets and batons. Tensions have been rising for some time at the Cortes Generales, the parliament itself. The Socialists finished behind the People's Party in the July general elections, but the victors failed to gather enough support to form a government. Now, Sanchez is close to finding that support, but he'll need to form a coalition with left-wing alliance Sumar. And regional support is expected in the form of the Catalan Republican left and Together for Catalonia. The two parties are said to be the brains behind the amnesty plan, which they expect in exchange for their support. But as they wait in the wings to solidify an alliance with Sanchez, backlash to their potential team-up is spreading to other Spanish cities and could become a nationwide phenomenon.
So let's get some perspective now from one politician who stands to benefit from this amnesty. Marielle Saret is the Minister of Foreign Action and European Union for Catalonia. And she joins us now from Barcelona. Thanks so much for being with us. Pedro Sanchez believes that this is good because he says Catalonia is, quote, ready for full reunification, and that more than 80% of Catalans support this measure. Is that indeed true? Are Catalans happy to stay part of Greater Spain?
The Catalan government, and I think a large majority of Catalan people,
What we are happy and glad is that we finally could reach this agreement, an agreement that is good for the Catalan people in many terms. On one hand, because regarding the political conflict, it paves the way to make steps forward in this resolution to the political conflict through politics and through the democratic principles. And that will be done thank you to this amnesty law that will end all the criminalization of the independentist movement and all these judiciary prosecutions, and then reinforcing also the table of negotiation between the two governments, the Catalan government and the Spanish government, as I said before, to make these proposals to reach this solution through democracy, through the vote of the people, and then also because we could agree good achieves in the economical terms with major investments in infrastructures of mobility and also investments on universities, research, and
right. We can talk a little bit more about the potential financial agreements in a minute. But I mean, ultimately, you still want independence for Catalonia.
Yes.
You do.
Yes, in Catalonia, there is still this strong independentist movement. The independentist party, we are still a majority in the Catalan parliament, and yet the Catalan government is led by a President Aragonès, and all the members of the government, we are members of Esquerra Republicana, the Republican left of Catalonia, and we are clearly independentists. But as I said before,
it's confusing because, as you know, Pedro Sanchez is kind of selling this as if the Spanish public in general doesn't have a whole lot to worry about, because he believes a majority of Catalans actually don't want independence, and that he'll be a better leader in unifying the country so that the Catalans won't really want that secessionist future. But let me ask you this. I mean, details of this deal still aren't entirely clear. But from what we understand so far, an independence referendum would only be able to be held with approval from the Prime Minister, with approval from the Parliament, and with approval from the King. Are you comfortable with that?
We are comfortable in the terms that we have agreed to discuss politically how to put in practice this right of the Catalan people to decide about our own future, and that we want to build this consensus. We want to find this political agreement and doing this negotiation in terms of equality, mutual respect, and so.
So you haven't necessarily agreed on that process to make it necessary. Would you want it to be entirely necessary to have parliamentary approval, Prime Minister's approval, and the King's approval to hold a referendum?
We will see which are, in the end, the different steps, but we want to have this agreement, this consensus, so that then the result is well accepted by all the parts, and that the solution is democratic, so that it respects the right of the Catalan people to decide about our own future. This is for us the most important thing, to be always coherent in the democratic principles, and then, as I said before, to be able to talk about it, to negotiate about it, to reach political agreements between the different parts about this. And if we reach this consensus, if we agree in the way on how we can express democratically what we want to be, which must be this political future, we will agree with that.
Fair enough.
Because we are Democrats.
Okay. That's very important because the people on the streets actually don't quite see Catalan nationalism as part of democracy. They see it as, a more extreme movement that bans Spanish language in public schools, and that really only sees a future for ethnic Catalans. Go ahead.
These are biased visions, and these visions are expressed by extreme right positions, that the ones that have also been claiming these days in the streets, how to say, speeches sometimes even of hate, and remembering all days of Francoism, and even enhancing Franco. So
Would you be willing, for example, to bring back the Spanish language, more of the Spanish language in Catalan private or public schools?
In the Catalan public schools, we have a very good system that has also been recognized at the European level that helps that all children achieve, when they end all the scholar period, the same level of knowledge of Catalan and Spanish. And this is the best way so that we can grant them the equality of opportunities when they face later the labor market and all their capacity to develop at all professional and social entourage and context.
Okay.
So this is a very good system to achieve this equality of opportunities, to achieve this cohesion in our society.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because personally you have had to face various legal issues of your own because of your push for Catalan independence. Tell me a little bit about those and how this amnesty would personally benefit you.
First of all, we have always asked for the amnesty not to solve individual situations, but to find this collective solution that keeps and reinforces the strategy of negotiation and political and democratic solution to the political conflict. And in my personal case, nowadays, I faced the trial. I was a former member of the government that organized the referendum on 1st October. I faced the trial. I had a sentence of 1 year banned from public office and a fine. And I'm nowadays pending on the final sentence from the Supreme Court. And we will see what happens in the following months regarding the hypothetical approval of the amnesty law. We hope it will be approved. And then not only my case, but the case of hundreds of people that have been living this judiciary, economical, or administrative prosecution and persecution because of their position during the organization on the referendum of 1st October, or in the demonstrations, or just because they were public officers in the government at that time. They have been experiencing these prosecutions, and we think this prosecution was for a penal prosecution for acts that should have never been considered as penal crimes.
Marielle Saret, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there, but I'd really like to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great to have you. Thanks. Well, let's broaden out the debate now, and joining me from Barcelona is Rafael Arenas. He is a former president of Catalan civil society and a professor of private international law at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. And from Cardiff, Andrew Dowling is an associate professor in Catalan and Spanish history at Cardiff University. Thanks both so much for being with me. Rafael, begin by explaining why you think this is just a bad deal and how could it potentially damage Spain and its national institutions.
So, from my point of view, it's a bad deal because it's a bill that assumes the point of view of nationalists. As you know, here there is a dispute, a conflict between the nationalists, the Catalan nationalists. They want the independence of Catalonia, and they have a way to explain what happened in Spain in 2017 and before this year and after this year. There is a story about the nationalist the nationalist part. The nationalist side is they are the good guys, and Spain is a bad state, and the legal actions against nationalists were not legitimate. So the point is that at this moment, the party, the Socialist Party, the party who takes the government in Spain, and possibly the party who is going to achieve a new government after a few days, is saying that, well, this is okay, that the point of view of nationalists is the good point of view, that it was in some way legitimate to abolish the constitution in Catalonia. That is what's happened in 2017, and I think that this is this weakens the Spanish position in this issue. But the most important, and that the deal is a deal that threatens the division between the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judiciary. And this is a point that is against the rule of law. I think that these are the two main reasons for considering this a bad agreement.
Okay. Andrew, does that sound fair?
Well, I mean, as Rafael began, he said it from his point of view. So, I mean, you know, I think one of the things that we should note is that in parliamentary systems, and Spain is a parliamentary democracy, if the parliament passes a law and it has majority assent, that is the law of the land. So it's pretty clear that there are the votes to pass this amnesty law. So that will be the law of the land. So in a sense, there are many laws that we don't agree with, but we have to accept them because they're the law of the land. I think it's also important to note that this is an agreement to solve a very serious political problem, which has been the Catalan crisis, the Catalan issue. The two parties who've signed this agreement are not political allies, they're political opponents. And it's a kind of recognition amongst many issues. It's a recognition that Spain has had a serious political problem with Catalonia over the past 6-7 years, if not before. And it's an attempt really to try to address and heal some of those wounds. Now, it won't heal all of them, but I think in broad terms, I think it's a positive measure. I personally have been very critical with Catalan independence and some of their actions. And I think this is a sign of a mature democracy that you were able to form an agreement to solve a serious political conflict with your political opponents, and that's exactly what that is. The government in Madrid and you know, political forces in Barcelona who have very different political views. I think it's much better to have a compromise, which is what this law is, than have a continuing political conflict. You know, we look on our news screens today and we see intensified political conflict. So I actually think in general terms, what's happening in Spain is broadly positive.
I mean, it's...
Well,
okay, go ahead, Rafael.
I disagree. I have to say that I disagree in 2 points. The first point is that, well, maybe in common law countries is the land of the law and all these things, but here in a civil law country. And so about the law coming from the parliament, we have the constitution and we are part of the European Union. And as we are part of the European Union, we are also obliged to respect the principles and values of Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. And one of these principles is the respect to the independence of judiciary and the respect to judicial decisions. So I think that we are going to...
Let me ask this question, though. Before we get too far ahead, I mean, this is kind of assuming that all of this will be instituted. But right now, Pedro Sanchez is saying that actually this will better unify the country because he said that the majority of Catalans are actually against secession. They don't want to separate from Spain necessarily. And we've seen polls that have said more and more now against the separatist movement itself. But he's also said that with the new law, and the details are scarce, any move to hold another and a legitimate referendum on separation would have to pass, first of all, it would have to get the Prime Minister's own approval, then it would have to get parliamentary approval, and then it would have to get approval from the King, all of which seem very unlikely to happen. So, I mean, Andrew, why isn't that kind of good enough for those protesters out on the street as an insurance?
Yeah, well, because really there are kind of two Spains. There's a plural, cosmopolitan, multinational, multilingual Spain, and there's a kind of like a conservative, intolerant Spain that is incapable of recognizing difference. And that conservative, intolerant Spain was the originator of the Catalan conflict. They caused the problem in the first place through their intolerance. For example, when Mariano Rajoy came to power as Conservative Prime Minister in November 2011, support for independence was about 18%. When he left office 5 years later, it was 45-50%. So right-wing conservative Spain, through its inability to recognize the country's linguistic and cultural diversity, just, you know, it refuses to recognize reality. Catalonia is also a complex society.
Let me ask Rafael then. I mean, that's kind of
about that. But that is the basic point. Can you accept a multilingual, multinational Spain or not?
Go ahead, Rafael.
So I'm living in Barcelona, and my children are going to school here, and the only teaching language in school is Catalan. So, of course, we recognize in Spain, we recognize that we are a multilingual and multicultural country. Take notice in Catalonia, more than 55% of the people has as mother tongue Spanish, but the only teaching language in school, in all schools with public funds, is Catalan. So how can you say that we are not recognizing that this is a multilingual and multicultural country? Of course, and we have
I think you might be, but demonstrators across Spain.
I have to say that in Spain there are 17 autonomous communities. Catalonia is an autonomous community. The government of Catalonia, the nationalist government of Catalonia, rules health, public schools, police, culture, 40,000 million euros of budgets each year, the autonomous government in Catalonia. How can you say that there is no recognition of a multilingual and multicultural country? We are a country, almost a federal country. So the problem is not there. The problem, the conflict in Catalonia, is that since 2012, we are living in Catalonia, and I can say that because I'm living in Catalonia, under the rule of a regional government that is really the only government we have, because the competencies of the Spanish government here are very limited, a government that is telling us that they are going to follow the rules and they are going to apply the law only in this situation in which they are in agreement with the law. And they refuse to apply judgment, they refuse to apply the Constitution, they have abolished the Constitution. This is the conflict. And my point is, in which way this amnesty law is going to help to resolve this conflict. And if we are talking about coexistence, there is a lot of demonstration of people at the streets, not only in Madrid, also in Barcelona. Last Sunday, there was a huge demonstration in Barcelona, and there were more demonstrations in Barcelona against the amnesty and against this deal, because there is a strong division also within the Catalan society.
It's interesting, Andrew, because you say that it is conservative, intolerant Spain that is part of the problem, but then, as we hear Rafael and others, to be fair, arguing that it's these extreme nationalists in Catalonia that really are an even bigger problem. They're even less tolerant.
Yeah, I mean, there are, of course, there are extreme nationalists in Catalonia, but they're also, because it's a bigger country, they're extreme nationalists in Spain. And a lot of the demonstrations we're seeing, that we've got kind of really extreme right-wing forces are also involved in these demonstrations. So it's not just simply those opposed to the amnesty. We've seen kind of like, support for the Franco dictatorship and neo-Nazi symbology and all these types of things.
It seems there are rather extreme elements on both sides.
This whole situation is a clash of nationalisms. It's a clash between intolerant Spanish nationalism and, if you want, intolerant Catalan nationalism as well. They're both very strong, powerful forces.
I'll tell you what, though.
This is why we have a political conflict.
Right. I'll tell you what, very quickly, Andrew, very quickly, I want to look at just, where we're at right now. And some are saying Sanchez and the socialists are actually just trying to push this deal through as quickly as possible because the pressure of these protests could even force a new election. I mean, does their rush to do this and get this done show that they are quite nervous about the protests and the opposition?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, what's happening in the streets in Spain as well is also part of the playbook of the Spanish right since Pedro Sanchez has been prime minister in 2016, which is deny his government legitimacy. They say it's a Frankenstein government, it's an illegitimate government, and it's also a political tactic of the conservative right internationally to deny the democratic mandate. The reality is that Pedro Sanchez will almost certainly be prime minister on Thursday, and he will have a clear majority of the seats in the Spanish parliament. But right-wing forces in Spain are refusing to recognize his democratic victory. And I think we have to situate it within international movements that are happening where right-wing forces are refusing to recognize democratic outcomes.
Let me get Rafael some final words. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's not true that these demonstrations are far-right demonstrations or something like that.
I said
most
some
of the
people there.
some people, as in any demonstration, but I were there, and I have to say that most of the people are normal people, if you want, in some cases also socialists that are against this amnesty, because till the day of the election, the Socialist Party have maintained that this is against the Spanish Constitution, and that with them at the government, there will be no amnesty for nationalists who tried to separate Catalonia from Spain in 2017. This was the program of the Socialist Party at the elections in July. So there are also socialists at the demonstration. It's not a question of far right or strategies. There is a huge amount of people in Spain that is angry, and you can say that it's easy to understand. When a party goes to an election with a program, and 2 days after the election they change completely the program, how do you expect? People is angry, of course.
Okay, Rafael, that will have to be the final word. I'd like to thank both of my panelists so much for being with us on this edition of The Newsmaker, and our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.